In today's news, hear the latest story involving Christian Pulisic and his dad, as his dad releases a very cryptic tweet suggesting that Pulisic's future may be away from the club come the end of the season. And followed by that, we have even more news surrounding Romelu Lukaku and his future plans for next season, involving everyone you know other than your mama. So now let's start with the first story and let's discuss what exactly is happening with Christian Pulisic. Now, as you guys can see on the screen right now, this was the tweet released by his dad last night, and as the tweet states, the sad thing is he loves his club, teammates and London. Puts his heart and soul into being a pro. Onwards and upwards my boy, big 6 months ahead. Now this tweet could just be very innocent, and it could imply that of course Pulisic is getting ready to represent the United States of course in this year's World Cup. The World Cup is taking place near the end of the year, 6 months time. It could be that, and of course, you know, ideally if you're going to be getting ready to represent your nation, you need to be playing consistent football to have that form ready to compete in that international tournament. But afterwards, this tweet naturally got deleted in the end, and due to it being deleted, it could imply different contexts and other reasons. And for me, I think it could be quite evident that Mark Pulisic is frustrated at the lack of game time his son's getting. And maybe this could be slightly implying too that Pulisic is also not currently happy with the lack of minutes and the lack of game time. Of course, after getting that winner against West Ham, to not even be starting in the team against Everton, especially when Werner's form up front now is not being quite the same. And, you know, when they naturally complement each other's roles in games, Pulisic could be feeling quite annoyed by the fact that he's not getting fair opportunities. I'm going to ask you guys this. Do you feel like Pulisic has even really developed over these past 2 seasons? For me personally, after that breakthrough campaign he had in his first year here, the first season which even maybe like changed my thoughts and opinions on the player, he really hasn't been the same. And I don't think it's necessarily all down to his fault, even though I do think there is some responsibility that can be taken from the player as well. Of course, what doesn't necessarily help is that when you are able to get minutes in the team after impressing and training, a lot of times you're not playing in your best preferred position. A lot of times Pulisic has played more as a wing-back under Tuchel. He has played more on the right-hand side and more as a cam instead of actually playing on the left-hand side in that Werner role, where maybe you could argue, why haven't we seen Pulisic maybe take on the mantle left by Werner when Werner's form up front has been kind of inconsistent at times? Could Pulisic be feeling these same things himself? Who knows? But regardless, it just feels like there isn't really a strong place for Puli in this team. I feel like the system and how we play doesn't even necessarily take advantage of some of the best parts about his game, like his, you know, acceleration, turn of pace, his dribbling ability too. I mean, during that first season, he was a very consistent presence for us on the counter-attack, and also in the final thirds, the movement inside the box, the finishing with both feet, you know, his ability to take on his man, and just the type of elegance behind the close control. I mean, he really impressed a lot of people, and considering that Tuchel has worked with him prior at Borussia Dortmund, maybe you're thinking for better things for the player, but ultimately things just haven't worked out. Now that Tuchel has introduced a system that maybe benefits and prioritizes the defense more than actually attacking players, I feel like Pulisic has paid the price for things quite naturally. As I said earlier, this isn't all down to Tuchel. Of course, Pulisic can take some responsibility in this moment too, and naturally if you're Tuchel, you're going to find it quite hard to select a player when you feel worried that 1, they could break down at any moment, and 2, a lot of times you can't even rely upon them when you want to use them because they're not fit. You know, a lot of times we've heard Tuchel mention that Pulisic maybe felt the strains of travelling around a lot to play for his international team. Of course, constant travel, time zone differences, etc. That could naturally take a toll after a while, and during like very intense parts of the season, you want players that are going to be ready to press from the front and play with intensity, because that's one thing Tuchel stresses is key to his success and our success as a team: intensity from the front. And maybe Tuchel feels from a tactical point of view that if I can't rely upon Pulisic to maybe put in the same work off the ball that Timo Werner provides when he does play, then it's a big risk using him, knowing that he could be the main guy that could ruin the team press and be the one that causes holes in the rest of the team. So I also understand and see things from that perspective as well too. But ultimately, I guess it's going to come down to whether Pulisic feels like his future is going to be here. And, you know, after reading the tweets and, you know, seeing his lack of game time and lack of development over these past 2 seasons, maybe him and his dad are feeling maybe it's time to move on now. Could you argue that maybe if he went to Liverpool instead, he'd be in a much better position than what he's at currently? Who knows? Possibly. After I was told about interest from Barcelona and Pulisic in January, and we went back to Barca telling them, listen, if you want Pulisic, we need to have Frankie de Jong as part of the deal. That told me instantly that I don't see the player staying here forever. He's definitely a player that I've grown to like a lot more since we signed him. I'm putting my hands up, you guys, and I can understand that frustration of not getting quality minutes in a position where you can really play your best football and affect things on the fields. So, you guys, what do we do with this situation? Do we just cash in on the player and reinvest that in other areas? Or do you feel maybe Tuchel has to budge a little bit, because Pulisic's not the first example of attacking players that do have a difficult time maybe adapting to the demands of Tuchel's system. Where do you all fall in line with this debate? Let us know in the comment section below. So right now, let's end things with a final story, and let's talk Romelu Lukaku, because it's starting to really look like there's a massive possibility that he will be leaving after his first season here. Now, a report came out from Nazar Kinsella from Goal.com, and essentially after Lukaku was not turned to come off from the bench to help turn things around for us in the game, the fact that he's only started one game in 9 and how he's barely used upon and relied upon right now, currently they're reporting that naturally Lukaku isn't particularly happy, and he is in a situation now where he's considering his future. Now ideally, as Goal.com's article does stress, Lukaku would prefer to remain here for another season and look to turn things around and come back even stronger. It may be with a pre-season, which he never had when we signed him, with more understanding with his teammates, maybe some new tactical ideas in the summer. They could be potential ways to find a way to get the best out of our most expensive player in our club history. However, as the article also does stress as well too, ultimately this comes down to Thomas Tuchel and whether he decides to make those changes. And currently, especially since the interview and especially since the turn of the new year, we haven't really seen too much inclination from Tuchel to want to find solutions to get the best out of Lukaku. Currently, we're seeing a two-man striker system with Havertz and Werner, with Mason Mount in behind, which has been interesting and has had some good successes for us as well. However, if Lukaku is going to remain here, there has to be a common ground met between the player and the manager. I feel like they need to find that equilibrium together. That's the only way for us to not really see our record signing as like a huge financial disaster, because the reality is if we try to sell him now in the summer, we aren't going to get close to that 100 million. And how many clubs in Europe needs a big striker who's on massive wages? I mean, he's on 325,000 a week. I'm sure with more clauses on top too. The only two clubs currently showing interest are Inter Milan and AC Milan. AC Milan are relying upon getting new investors to come in from Bahrain, and with Inter Milan, the best bet of actually hoping to re-sign Lukaku is by signing the player back on loan. Now, could we find some agreements to maybe bring the costs down a bit, some like guaranteed clauses that, make sure that Inter Milan will have to pay money after like maybe a set amount of appearances, goals, things being met, etc, etc. Who knows? But of course, there's been Barcelona interest as well too. They have spoken to his agent as well to find out the situation and find out any potential interest. But I don't see Barca as the club that even have the money to come anywhere near close to being able to afford some of the wages that Lukaku is currently on. If I was to give my personal thoughts and opinions, I just feel like purely based on a financial point of view, to give up so quickly on our most expensive player ever, especially when it feels like it's not as if the player has downgraded and dropped another level. It just feels like there needs to be some better frameworks inserted to, find a system that gets the best out of him. Like I'm really stressing, but I actually believe that middle ground, that common ground between the manager's demands and of course a system that also complements Lukaku. Because for me, responsibility has to be taken, of course, because Tuchel was very okay with his signing when the boards, of course, confirmed that Lukaku was a player they thought would be good for the team. He didn't say no to that. And actually in interviews before, when the season was starting, he felt like Lukaku up front being the focal point that's going to supplement his teammates, create spaces for players to run off. In theory, it works, but in reality, it hasn't been the same. And Lukaku's never been the guy that makes others better. A lot of times he's relying on good service, and at Inter Milan, that was what Lautaro Martinez was doing. So if we wanted to have a striker that was going to be the guy to bring others in the game, why did we not go for Martinez instead? It would have been a lot cheaper for us and actually complemented and suited the system. So, this is why I can't solely blame everything down to Lukaku and that interview, because I think the framework from beforehand, it wasn't really set up to really get the best out of him or really any striker. I think with the summer approaching and the fact that Tuchel himself has admitted that the team needs some surgery next season. With Jorginho, our defence, Pulisic and so many players' futures being linked away, I feel like this is a big time now to maybe use this window, use this surgery as a way to update how we play as a team. I feel if certain players like Jorginho go, etc, etc, I then feel like Tuchel will then have the confidence to use different ways of playing, different systems, maybe the return of a back four, knowing that he can have full faith and trust in the players he has to be able to, you know, maintain that quality off the ball, maintain that quality defending out of possession. That is the key thing. For me, that would be the best way to find that middle grounds, because it's not just only been Lukaku who's struggled up front for us. I think nearly all our attacking players have struggled quite a lot, and considering the money that these guys cost us, what they were doing beforehand, I'm sorry, you know, I still will always feel like we can be getting a lot more from them, and we need to find a way now to, you know, not only just get the best out of half the team, but of the entire team, the entire squad. And I do think that if we use different ways of playing, let's say a 4-3-3 with Lukaku being the focal point up front to be on the end of moves, to get on the end of service, just like players like Drogba used to have, Diego Costa, etc, etc, I think that we can find a way to get the best out of our most expensive player, and hopefully not risking wasting so much money that could have long-term ramifications for our financial future. So you guys, on that note, I'm going to wrap things up, keep things moving. I'm thinking to bring back a live stream tomorrow. So if you guys want to see a live stream, please, of course, let me know in the comment section. I'm going to release a poll to see the results, because if you guys want it, then I'll definitely bring one for tomorrow. So on that note, I'm in the FC. This is Blue Lions CV. I'll catch you guys later with some more videos.